All right, it's 7 p.m. I'm going to run through all of this track first. This is my first release on Night Bass. It's called High Def. I wrote it like a year ago, something like that. I'm a pretty good friend of PD Clicks, and he's been playing my music out for a while, but a lot of my music isn't quite their sound. So when I started writing this one, I could tell like pretty quickly that this was probably going to be the one to try and get on there, and I really committed to it with the rest of the production choices, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. So I'm going to get this going. We'll listen through this. During that listen through, maybe just jot down questions. Don't actually post them in the comments yet, because I'm going to like kind of go through some things I think are cool, and then I'll open it up to questions, and you can hit those then. Alrighty, let me close everything and get going. Alright. And outro is pretty similar, so I'm not gonna like go through that part. It's pretty much my outros and intros are sort of reverse versions of each other, typically. I intentionally don't like to make them too interesting for layering reasons. I know some people like very interesting intros and outros, and it's a DJ ability choice for me to not like that. Obviously, from a listenability standpoint, you know, you're playing this on Spotify or something, it's like, this is boring for 45 seconds, but you just have to sort of decide what you are prioritizing. And for me, that's, I want people to play my tracks out, and I've had big artists get on my case about putting, you know, lyrics and big melodic motifs early in the song. So I would suggest thinking twice about that before doing it. Cool. So I'm going to dive right in, and then I'm going to stop in a little bit and check in on some questions. So keep those ready. So I'm first going to talk a little bit about my grouping structure, because it's pretty much always the same in my projects. It was a perk of moving to Ableton 10. I did this grouping in Ableton 9 too. It just was much more complicated and required a ton of sends. But with Ableton 10, you don't need to do that. So I sometimes get a little carried away with groups and groups. But I think that it's a big part of my production style and has allowed me to develop some sound design techniques that were hard to get away with otherwise. So, let's see. Starting from the top, I always put my low frequency stuff at the very top, and that's in a larger group I call low. But because there isn't very much bass in this song, in terms of like sub frequency content, I really only have one sub channel. I have a little falling 808 thing I snagged and resampled from a Kyle Watson track that's actually so layered that like you don't even really hear what it used to sound like. I just really like the low frequency in it. It's got this like analog semi-stereo vibe, which a lot of this song has some in and out of stereo bass work, which is if you like Kyle Watson, he does this a lot in his production. And I enjoy the sound of it. I have a kick group here, which I'm not, there's a MIDI send to the sub that's doing something. Oh, that's kind of cool. Okay, I'll go to that in just a sec. So I have my main kick, which I stole from a song. I do that a lot. But because typically the stealing method requires that you low pass the kick, which I'll show in this example, cut out like a kick from an intro. All of the normal stuff is the same. Make sure you turn off snap and really like lock in that transient. And then you have a low pass filter running here with an envelope that allows the click transient to come through, but often in like a fully mastered song, there's all sorts of atmosphere and ambience that trickle into the higher frequencies, even in an intro if they're running like vinyl noise or whatever the fuck. And this is a good way to cut all of that out. But the problem is you lose some of that high frequency transient. So this is what I normally do. I reintroduce a kick topper. I'll call it kick topper so we can see it. I really like the selector kit, which comes stock with Ableton Suite. This is the selector kit warm, which just gives you access to some drive and distortion units that the normal selector kit doesn't. All this is a compilation of all of the drums in Ableton thrown into selector kits instead of single samples firing per drum sample. So you'll see down here it's got a kick selector, a rim selector, snare selector, yada yada. So I'm using this just for the kick selector, none of the other drums. But here we have this sample dial in here, right? If I pull this open, pop open the zone, you'll see all the kicks that come with Ableton are mapped in here. And the selector, which is this guy here, this chain knob is macroed to sample here. So what that's doing is when I move this sample up and down, you can see this little blue guy up in the top shifting around. So I typically like to throw this on, high pass it, you know, at like 150, 200 hertz, because I don't want any of the low content. And just run the kick loop and listen for what kick naturally fills what's not there with the other kick. So if I'm soloing this, this is sort of the process. I'm playing it. This is on the kick I liked, but I could be on this one. No. Oh, that's kind of nice. Nah. Nah. So I just went back to 2. That approach I do very often. Typically kicks that I like the sub and dynamics of on the low end do not match up to the transients on the top, or I just hate the click transient. Normally I don't like click transients in general, so this is a nice way for me to pick my own transient that's a little softer. I'm partial to clicks that hit closer to 1K and 2K. A lot of the conventional click transients and kicks wean towards like 4,000 to 6,000 hertz. And to me, that is abrasive. I don't like it on sound systems. I feel like it's kind of like jabbing in your ears. In general, my mixing style leans towards soft and round mixes with heavy sounds. Like I like the energy to be high, but not the actual frequency range and transients and whatnot. Which is, I'll discuss how I do this with other things as well. But one cool thing I'm doing here, I have this MIDI send here. I'm going to call it like a sub SC send. That's what I normally call it. So you'll notice that the MIDI, there's no instrument in here. And it's being routed to the sub channel. The sub channel has a Serum effects unit on it, right? It actually has multiple. But I'm routing it to the second Serum effects channel. So the idea here is I'll make a sound that has like a lot of fat frequency content, some redux. I made a frequency rich sub sound, which if I mute all this shit. So there's just a lot of bended sub frequency stuff here. The original sound is from, oh yeah, let me mute this too, my bad. The original sound is from the Arturia kit, or the Arturia 5 collection. Sort of a confusing plugin. It's like modular. I used a preset and then altered a couple of the envelope decisions on it. The original preset is supposed to be like a kick synth, which gives you sort of the falling sub-frequency content, and I wanted something sort of bendy and wonky and wobbly, so that worked out well for it. And I'm doing some glide stuff, it looks like, where you see how these go these MIDI notes trace over this one. So there's going to be a glide up to this note, cut off, and then a glide up to this note. And I think they're already gliding down because it's a kick synth. So turn this back on. I introduce some erosion, or no, I don't automate this erosion. I'm not even using the erosion, so don't worry about that. I have a Serum Effects that's getting it some beef with a diode distortion unit. And then this is where things really start moving. So I have all these custom curves. I don't actually remember where I got them, but pretty much there's a bunch of different envelope curves and LFO curves and whatnot. They each just have a different shape. I picked one and attached it to this low EQ knob here to let it sort of wub at this LFO frequency rate, which is resetting every bar. And I think because the sound wasn't defined enough, I did it twice. So you really get a lot more of the movement. That second one really introduces the pump effect of it. But it's just the same shit. They're both soft clip and EQs. So I might do this.
Make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer. In every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
I do this with a filter instead of an EQ. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but it's a nice way to introduce movement quickly to a sound post the synth. I know a lot of people like to do this in synth. A lot of my sound design is post-processing, and I pride myself on that as sort of like a characteristic of my sound. I'll take a kick and try and make it every single sound in the track or something like that, just using post-production or out of the box, out of the synth. So the reason why I brought this MIDI here is Serum Effects, in order to get it to trigger the LFOs and the envelopes in here, it needs to take a MIDI input. These LFOs don't just run on their own. I actually used to work with Steve as a mentee, and while he's a great developer, he sort of learned a lot of this stuff on the fly. And so a lot of his things, there's a way to really access a deeper level of Serum in the X4 products, but they're sort of in convoluted methods. Like, I don't know if you've used Cthulhu, but it's a similar sort of thing where it's a really weird routing mechanism to use it, but it's a very powerful tool. So I think Serum Effects has not really been highlighted as powerful a tool as it should be, because you get access to Serum's modulation matrices, which are the best modulation matrices to date, in my opinion, even with my bias. And I use these to move, distortion units, to move chorus effects, to move, feedback on a delay. And if you get some custom curves or even just save your own, you get into really quick methods of movement without much effort, which I'm all about, less effort. Some other plugins in the chain. There's sort of a greasy digital effect here. I like Retro Color. It's a great plugin. It's kind of like an all-in-one unit for different color effects. This digital one is just a redux, a bit crush type effect, but without it, you don't get that grit on the top end. And I'm very much like, I like my subs to have like good low end and sort of like a weird tingy, very high end and nothing in the middle. And that just leaves room for drums. And in this song, I have a bunch of neuro-based stuff, which I'll get into after this. But I like to leave room in the middle for sub stuff. Saturation knob is just like a one knob. It's great because it has a keep low setting. which means that it won't harm the low end when you push the drive in, which most saturators like destroy the sub frequency content when you drive them. I think these are just for like some weird effects moment, but I don't really know when that happens. Oh yeah, it's that one part. So I think I'm just introducing some weird stereo grit stuff for this one section. Looks like just saturators and filters. Some mixing stuff. Some ozones, it looks like, or something. Some vintage EQs. I love the massive passive. It's a great UAD color EQ, but it destroys your CPU, so. And I won't get into UAD stuff really, because most of y'all probably don't use that. Cool. So I'm going to take a quick stop and check for questions. I think there's probably some delay on my feed. So I'm going to check again for the questions in like 2-3 minutes. And I'm just going to start talking about the neuro bass in this song instead of how I arrived at getting the bass sound design in it. So for a lot of neuro-based sound design, I think it's really important to get the movement to match the sub movement. And the neuro part, in my opinion, is a mid-bass sound, right? You can high pass out all of its low end. And I know bass producers don't really do this, but in house music, I like to sort of separate frequency ranges. And so I typically take my sub, I put neuro processing chains on the sub, resample it, take those resamples and chop them up, and then develop my neuro sound from that. So here I have my neuro samples. I'm going to solo these two with the low end. Okay, so a lot of these are resampled out, so you aren't going to be able to see what I did, but I'm going to show you what I did. I'll go through the post-processing after, but I'm first just going to explain the original process as to like how to get here. First, I'm going to check on questions. Oh shit, my bad. Sorry, I didn't scroll down. Alright, now I'm just like reading through all these. Cool. So you're routing the kick to the sub to trigger serum effects. Yes. So I did this in a, Kenneth asked if I'm routing the kick to the sub to trigger the serum effects. I did this a backwards way. It's before I sort of figured out the better way to do it. I didn't even need to put MIDI in this channel. I just needed to make a separate MIDI channel. Take MIDI from the kick, for instance, and then send MIDI to the sub. And that's kind of the way you normally do it. So I don't need MIDI in here at all. I think I did this at the very end of my project, so I was lucky enough to be able to just copy the MIDI over. But that's sort of a dumb methodology, because if you're still writing your track, you're going to have to like keep updating this like send with new MIDI, and it doesn't really make sense. But you do have to make sure you leave it on in. And make sure to change it to serum effects, because if you leave it on in without it on serum effects, it's going to create a MIDI feedback loop, which is like a really peculiar thing, but it can sound like what you'd imagine MIDI infinitely feedbacking, which depending on the sound you do that to, it can be very abrasive. Okay. So now we're going to go into this neuro stuff. So I have a couple different neuro processing chains. I have some of my own, but I started with, let's see, I don't know if I used Instant Neuro, but maybe. I looked up online a bunch of different effects plugin stuff. Oops. Yeah. Sorry about the, I'm going to pull the volume down. I did not use this one. I think I used Frequence Sine Compression one, which is free and available on his YouTube page. I love Nolan. He is a fantastic producer and cannot plug him enough as a person to learn from. He is a fantastic bass producer, but can really write anything. And he has a tutorial about why, like how he made this and like what the concepts are. Sine compression is a long topic, so I won't get too deep into it, but the gist of it is moving notch filters and heavily saturating that movement, usually putting amps or some form of noise distortion on it, and then clipping the shit out of that and repeat. And the way that these notch filters move, the saturators are going to interact differently with each movement because they're frequency dependent saturators, meaning the saturators change depending on the frequency content that is given to it. So a moving notch filter will change the effect of the saturator, giving it some really interesting harmonics. And you clip it to shit because you're taking out all of these frequencies and you need to pull them back up. You're bringing the noise floor back up. So I would take this, set up a resample. We'll just mute this, do this one channel and record here. I'm going to take off this retro color. Yeah. Cool. Cool. So I do shit like that. And then I run through my takes afterwards. Typically make like a keeper folder or like a keeper audio track. Run this out. So like what? Loop this with this. Be like, oh, this part's really cool right here. Cut this guy out. Pop it over to my keeper section. And then at the end of it, I got, one here, yada, yada. This one's cool. Pop this here. Delete this whole thing. And then I take these and I start to phrase them out throughout the section. The trick, though, is to make sure that, like, if I'm going to phrase this guy here, it always needs to be at the end of the bar turnaround. Because otherwise the movement won't match the movement of the sub, right? Because I resampled it off of this sub movement. And if I move this, say, here, the sub movement's going to be different than it is here. So you can phrase it like, for instance, I could change it and move it to here or over here, but not like here. And obviously you could do this, but in my implementation, I prefer not to because I like it to match perfectly with the sub. So when they do play together, the layering of it feels much more fluid. They go together better. So I did that a bunch. Now we're going to go back to this channel. One second. My trackpad just died. What the heck?
This is one of mine, yeah.
No, it's not. Okay, sorry about that. I use wireless stuff and sometimes it dies. Okay, I'm gonna check in on questions really quick. I see no questions currently, so I will oh no, just kidding. God, I have to keep scrolling, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, Nolan is frequent. Yes. Okay. Thank you. I like phrasing. So I am going to go through some of the processing here. I love Manipulator. It has some cool stereo stuff. It seems like it automated something. Which, let's see where I did it. Ah, yes, here. So things with a lot of high frequency, sort of like grainy sounds, a formant shift on them does some really peculiar effects because formants are typically tracking like single vocal throat frequency ranges, which aren't properly represented in a noisy sample. So often I like doing formant shift stuff on noise-based or noise layered sounds, just because you never really know what you're going to get. The low formants are better. The high formants kind of make everything just sound like a bee buzzing. If I pull it up here. More dubsteppy, I guess. I don't know. It's fun. The stereo knob in Manipulator, though, is fantastic. It's probably one of the best stereos out there. It's sometimes two stereo. It looks like I'm not using it in this track, though. If you like Omnom, he uses that on everything. This is a cool example of a layering thing I did. So this whole sound together sounds pretty cool. So there's a combination of a couple things going on here, right? Sorry, let's just loop this guy. So this autopan is giving a lot of the movement of the track, right? So I have this whole neuro group with a bunch of my different neuro sounds going on. If I mute the autopan, you get this sort of layered Cashmere Ride sample like with it. And I didn't put that there until I did the autopan effect. And my reason for putting it there was just to define the wub effect. But in general, using something like an autopan on with the phase down to 0, which turns it into essentially a tremolo plugin, which means volume LFO'd sounds. It's a really good way to glue multiple sounds together, especially sustained sounds. Say you want the vocal to kind of turn into a sub. Well, if you have a sustained vocal and a sustained sub play together, and you sort of do some autopan wub thing over both of them, and have the rate of that be the same, they start to meld together into one sound, right? Because a lot of what our ears do to attach a sound to another sound has to do with the time domain of those two sounds, right? If they're moving in sync with each other, our ears start to meld them together, even if they're totally timbrally different. So that's a really good technique to glue sounds. Erosion is a good technique to glue sounds because the same timbre of noise is attached to both. Yeah. So I had like 3 different sounds all being layered. A little vocal ambience, a ride, a neuro sound. I don't even know what that is. Some granular glitch texture thing. But yeah, so the phrasing with all of this, some of the phrasing was just sort of figured out, on the fly, but in really dancey music, like club-oriented music, it sounds really nice to have something punchy just hit on the one. So this was probably the first thing I placed. It's a really simple sound, but it gives this really nice turnaround back to the one every time. And in general, for a lot of house music, having something do this symbolically, even if it's just like a little perk or, every 4 bars, a little like chime that's -40 that just sort of clicks on the one. You're just trying to subconsciously pull people back to that moment. And it allows you to sort of move away from doing a bunch of these, like, I really hate risers. I hate build-ups. I hate build-up drums. Anything that tells you something's coming in a normal way sort of just, it feels really cheesy to me. So you have to get sort of clever if you want to avoid those things in building energy and tension. And having some clear, defined moments that tell you where the one is, tell you that something's getting close to the end before it turns back to the one. are going to be really important in letting the listener know that something's coming without having to be like, dugga, 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 it's coming, like, look out. Yeah, if you can't tell, I don't really like that stuff. But to be fair, you know, I still have little riser things like this. But you'll notice that one is a groove automated type thing, which it seems to be moving interestingly. I'm wondering if I did something here. Sorry, my chains get kind of long and let's see. Okay. I'm not doing any movement. Yeah, I didn't do it in that case, but it seems to have a cool groove already to it. I think what I probably did is gate this to some groove trigger, which I also do a lot in songs. I don't know if, I imagine probably if you've had a session with Taryn or Dylan, they've showed you this, which I showed them. But it is a fun method to get things to bounce with a groove. So if you take a groove track, in this track it looks like I'm using SP1200 swing. This is just represented as MIDI normally. So you can just drag it out and it's a C1 note in a MIDI clip. So I can take that, throw an operator on it. I typically turn it into a little click track, so just make a tiny little click, white noise. It's a terrible sound on its own. But I would never actually play it, I'm just muting it. And then I can take whatever I want to move to the groove of the song, like say this neuro stuff, throw a gate on it. Go to 63, which is my groove track. Pop in here. So notice everything is moving to that little groove. And I can automate the release to sort of open it up and then close it. So stuff like that. Very effective method. And I think I did do that on that resample. I just resampled it out so you can't see it. All right, I'm going back to questions. Kenneth asked if I resampled that to fit the phrase of the sub. I did, exactly. I put, sort of to my point earlier with where I placed the bass lines, I tried to place them where they line up with the original resample of the sub. So they're going to be phrased pretty similar. What am I routing into the vocoder? Crap. Well, that requires me to know where the vocoder is. Do you recall where you saw a oh, here. Well, let's first see where I do it. I think I routed a vocal into it. Yeah. And I put a delay on it so you can hear it after. So 43 is... Yeah. So it's just like a grain stretched version of the high def. And then I routed that into the neuro sample via a vocoder. So it only acts for a second, right? Here. But the trick is, I did this little delay thing afterwards that sort of keeps it running texturally in the next section. I use this thing I made a long time ago called Delay with Clean. This is an older iteration of it. But essentially, it's like a send delay embedded within a single effect unit, so I don't have to deal... I hate dealing with sends for delays and stuff. All I really ever use these for is for reverb, and then all of my other stuff is in channel. So I have a little send volume here, right? That basically means that I'm only going to take the audio from this small section here and send that into the delay. So it's sort of a reverse of a normal send. All of this is at negative infinity, meaning I'm sending nothing into the delay, and then right here I'm sending all of the signal into the delay, and then it goes back to nothing. So I put this on the group because I wanted all the group processing on it. But I didn't want any of these other neuro things to get delayed. And I'll show you what happens if I get rid of the way it is normally. Right? So all that shit gets delayed also. So I just wanted that little moment that was vocody to keep going. And that way you can sort of like have this lasting, like, whoa, is that the vocal or is that the neuro part? And it was both. But yeah, I am a nerd. I'm sorry. Okay. Checking back for questions. Trying to be a little quicker. My chins are very long. This is how I work. I honestly don't understand why I do this to myself, but you know, it's sort of like when you have a really messy room, but you know where everything is, and it's like, it could be like under like 30 different items, but it's like, oh yeah, like I knew exactly what that was. That's essentially my Ableton projects, but I am very good normally. This isn't perfectly color-coded, but I normally color-code everything exactly the same. I do my groups always the same. I always make it so that it's only 2 groups at the top level. So if I'm listening back to the track, I'm only looking at this. This is important for your sanity. I cannot stress enough. Because say like, I'm thinking big picture, right? And I'm like, oh, like, what if I like want to like move this drop section like over here? Then I can just be like, wham, like grab that, copy it, you know, delete it from here, like insert it over here, like, you know, blah, 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 boom, it's done. But I'm not going to do that. But it lets you think of things in a much bigger picture. And if you're looking at all the little intrinsic small shit, intrinsic's the wrong word, minute bullshit, that one. You're just not going to get to the big picture moments when you're arranging it. So cool. Let's check again on questions. Seems like we're good. I'm going to delve into drums if y'all don't have anything in particular you want me to go over next. And I'll check back in a sec in case we do. I'm going to loop one of the like major drum sections so we can just sort of piece it apart. I'll put a kick in here for, you know, so you can feel the groove. Okay. I'm going to start from this beginning section so you can sort of hear drum progression. Sometimes it's hard to hear it in light of all the other shit, so we're going to go through this. Okay, so I just saw a question on vocal processing and effects. So I'm going to switch to that and then get back to the drums. I'm sorry, it was a tease. Call this mids, is what I typically call it, which is like synths, vocals, that stuff. Unfortunately, I think I don't have all of my processing in this version of the track, but maybe I have some of it. Let me see if I can pull a version that does have this.
Make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer. In every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
Not even in D3. Come on. Oh, nice. I have it in this version, so that's cool. Also, if you guys aren't aware of this, you definitely should be. You can open up any of your projects down to the smallest track and just drag them in. It will save your life on whether or not you should bounce stuff, because as long as you save a bunch of drafts whenever you do anything new and nominal, you can just pop back to your old draft and drag it back in if you're like, shit, I shouldn't have frozen that. And I'm now on a computer that has a CPU that I'll never really deal with that again, but I know the struggle. I had that issue and it sucked. So I don't want you guys to have to deal with that. It looks like I'm missing whatever sample. No, this one. So I don't know what this is from originally. Some acapella, it seems. Excuse me. But I took a little bite-sized chunk. I'm going to mute all the effects first. So there's a pump that's coming from something. Yeah, there's a lot of side chains going on at the group level, so that's where the pump is coming from. But the sound is not in key with the song. Looks like I had a kick sample. Where's this guy? Boom. Snag City. Nice. Found some other shit too. Oh, that's kind of cool. So I layered a kick with the vocal to give it a little bit more of a punch. I don't know if you guys even really hear it, but I sometimes do that if I'm doing like vocal chops and stuff. If the vocal chop is lacking a transient, or say, for instance, the sibilants, like their S or like their T, like with a voiceless consonant, isn't well defined, you can pick a drum that emulates, like a B sound, for instance, layers nicely, like a 909 tom, can sort of accent a B sound pretty well. A T and an S could be a closed or an open hat, but you can take those and just like massage them in at like negative 30 dB or something to line up with wherever the consonant should be hitting, and you can sort of reintroduce a consonant to a vocal that doesn't have it because of the recording or whatever. In this case, I don't know why I picked a kick, but I did. I used Little Altar Boy, which is a Sound Toys effects plugin, on robot mode, which forces everything into a single pitch. And I'm pretty sure I did this because the pitch was just wrong. So pitch at 0 is going to put it at C. So I put it at B. I also format shifted it down so it's a little bit more hood. And added a little bit of drive, which, to be honest, I don't normally like the Little Altar Boy drive that much, but it does really dust things up. It feels sort of like an amp, which in night-based style production, I think it helps to make everything a little dusty and gritty and ugly sounding. It's part of the production. I mean, they came from Speed Garage, which everything was just blasted through tape machines and stuff, so I've seen PD Clicks throw like 10 OTTs on his bass tracks and stuff, like not even joking. So it's definitely a thing. Yes. Yeah, I have a lot of computing power, Kenneth. I have 128 gigs of RAM, but I wrote this track on a 16 gig RAM laptop. So I did bounce a lot of this stuff out. Whereas if I show you a track I've been working on today, almost nothing's bounced out. So a couple of the other cool effects I did in this, and then I'll hop over to Airborne really quickly after I do some drums. So I'll probably only get like 15-20 minutes on Airborne, but that'll just be for the vocals. I'm going to turn on grain delay here so you can see what's going on. So obviously a lot of things are being automated. I can go through each one, but I feel like it's sort of self-explanatory, and this is going to be recorded so y'all can sort of piece through it. But the thing here is, like, when you start messing with stuff like spray, especially on a low frequency, it's going to really mess with the original rhythm of the sample, even though it's only at like a pretty low delay time in general. Although I am getting up to 40 milliseconds, which starts to, typically if you stay within like 20 milliseconds, like, people are not going to really notice it getting off. It'll just sound a little bit tensious. But at 40 milliseconds, people are going to know. So what do you do about that? You reintroduce a groove that is more quantized to the original song, which in this case I used an auto pan at an 8th note trigger. So this is locking it back into rhythm. And then low passed it, did some volume automation, it seems. Make it louder. I don't exactly know. It looks like I automated the volume up some because the grain delay sort of removes some of the volume of the track. People always forget about volume automation because it's so simple and not sexy, but I strongly suggest it. It's often the best tool to use. Cool. So I'm not going to get any more into that. So we have time for drums, and then we can hit up airborne, and then we'll wrap it up. Really quickly, checking in, no questions, but really start putting those questions in now if you have them so we can get to them. Okay, so back to the drums. Let's talk about grouping first. I typically have the snare separate from all the other drums. This isn't actually the best example of a track. Normally I would do a further step, which I'm going to do right now to show you. I have a group called not snare and a group that's snare. In this case, it's just one track. And then I would do some multi-band sidechain. In this case, I could just do Pro MB. You set the sidechain input to the snare. So that's going to be triggering. And then I can cut out some of these frequencies here. So in this case, I know that the snare is going through the middle of the track. It's a middle snare, so I can set these all to mid only. So I'm multi-band sidechaining out only the mid signal from the rest of the drums, only when the snare hits. Pull these thresholds down. And I can, check up on here to see the frequency content. Looks like I got stuff mostly up here. It's like these two chains should be doing more work. Please attack, release, look ahead. This is a crucial step to making your snare pop through your mix. If you do it with a full side chain, it's going to be too non-transparent, in my opinion. And it will mess with the original drum groove. But if you can just sort of sandwich it in on only the frequency content that matters and only the stereo image that matters, you can make it pretty much just make the snare sound louder with less volume, which is good because I use really small dinky snares that end up feeling kind of loud in the mix because I just make sure everything gets out of the way for it. In this track, I have a hats group, percussion group, and then a couple other random things, like these little click guys. I like those because they have a lot of high-frequency content. I'm getting stereo spread out of these perk sounds through just a modified filter delay. I made a filter stereo thing a long time ago that I use on everything. But the idea here is I'll just take a normal filter delay and make it from scratch. If y'all are not familiar with the Haas delay, concept is if the same sound hits your ears on order of 0 to like 30 milliseconds apart from each other, the sound is not perceived as two sounds. It's perceived as the same sound but coming further and further apart from you. So rather than it coming straight at you head on, it's slowly coming in at a wider range until you hit this like 30 to 40 millisecond mark, where now it just sounds like two sounds hitting, like a flam or a slap back with a vocal. So I'm going to turn off the left-right channel, pull these frequencies all the way up, set them both to time, set this one, say, to 1 and to 10. take the dry signal out, set these to 0, pull the feedback down, and now pretty much all I have is the same sample hitting, preferably completely the same, but I have to get these frequencies right. But just one is hitting 1 millisecond late on the right, one's hitting 10 milliseconds late on the left. And because I took out the dry signal, I typically end up having to do some like negative delay or something, like 1 in 10. I kind of want the average signal to hit in the middle, so like -5 on my track delay or something. And that way, pretty much one's going to hit like 3-4 seconds early, one's going to hit like 3-4 seconds late. Everything's going to be sort of sandwiched around the transient, but coming from the sides instead of coming from the center. So without it, and with it, which makes me wonder if I'm getting mono or stereo signal in. I don't know. Hopefully you heard it. Okay. It's actually mid-side multiband side chaining. It's if you want to sound really smart, just start talking about mid-side multiband side chaining and people will be like, oh, it's great. Okay. Oh yeah, quick plug. I do lessons, so if you guys want to do them, hit me up. We're going to go through some of the percussion, I guess. Probably not that. It's pretty boring. It looks like I'm missing, oh yeah, I'm missing one sample in here. I don't actually know what it is. I hope it's not really cool, but we're not going to get to see what that is. Let's look at the hats. So I have a little click thing going on. This one is also filter delayed to get that stereo spread. I have another sample that is offline, which I couldn't get because it was on my laptop and couldn't find it. I have a hat coming straight through the middle. So I have the click on the outside, hat in the middle. And then I have, looks like a beefy hat. It's not that beefy, but it's open. The other one gives the beef of the middle transient. This number 18 is giving like middle hit. And then the second one is giving you like middle tail, right? And I'm talking in stereo terms because you should always think of drums in stereo. I could have two drums hit at the same volume, and if one's panned to the left and one's panned to the right, they will not fuck with each other at all in the mix. You got to realize like you have your whole stereo spectrum to balance sounds out. So if you don't think about them as in terms of like how far are they rotated left, how far are they rotated right, how wide are they, how mono are they, you're not going to be able to ever get your drum mixes as fat as the pros because this is what everybody does. Looks like I have one more hat. I dipped out. I imagine it's competing with one of these other hats. Yeah, it looks like, okay, yeah, so I do this trick a lot. I have two hats that I guess I thought were conflicting, this one and this one. So I look at this first one and I'm like, oh, this guy's hitting really hard right here. I'm going to put an EQ here to show me where it is. Okay, I did here. I took 3, and I just pulled it down, pulled the Q in, and boom, now it's just being removed from the other channel. Cool. 1 second. Alrighty. So the more advanced way to do what I just did, which I do now a lot, is I use Pro Q3 for things like this. If you hold down your cursor while it's playing, it'll start calculating where the local maximum and minimum are during the time range that you're holding down the mouse. So boom, you see here I got a C sharp 8 minus 44 cents, which you see also in the keyboard at the bottom. This guy is not, he's a little hot. I can just pop it down a little, take this one, pull it down a little, take this one, pull it down a little. And it's like, oh, that's cool, but like, what if it's not always hot? In this case, it's a single sample firing every time without any movement, so an EQ would suffice. But say I'm working with like a bass line that has like movement, and sometimes those are loud and sometimes they aren't. Well, I can take that, select all of them, pull the gain back up, and then pull right above it. There's this red knob here. This is a dynamic EQ, which is essentially a multi-band compressor with tighter Q options closer to a normal EQ, as opposed to like these band shelf shaped Qs. So I can pull this down, and now it's only going to go down when it crosses whatever threshold is set. Right now the threshold is an auto, which is just going to auto detect when it thinks it's too loud, which is sometimes okay and sometimes not. But you'll see these push down only when it gets too loud. And in general, everything that I do is never static. Like, I don't believe in static EQs where you just cut stuff out, unless for this one case that I showed you, there's a single drum hit hitting only the same every time. There's no movement. Okay, great, cut it out. But if you have any sound that moves at all, a vocal, a bass, even just like a drum loop that has multiple drums in it, anything like that, it should always be a multi-band compressor or a dynamic EQ. And my opinion on that is based on the fact that I don't want to ever cut a frequency out of a sound unless it's actually bad. And an EQ always cuts that frequency out. A dynamic EQ and a multi-band do not always do this. They only do it when it becomes at a problematic threshold, which is like, the thing is, there's give and take, right? If you don't have the CPU to handle that, it's going to be hard to do this on every track, and I'm privileged with the setup that I have. But whenever you can, especially for the sounds that matter the most to you, like a vocal, for instance, it should all be dynamic in general. Alrighty, I'm going to pop open Airborne. Alrighty, I'm going to play through half of it so you can sort of get an idea, and then we'll go through some vocal stuff.
I feel it when you look at me. It's something I can taste. It breathes beneath your legacy. It's written on your face.
I definitely can go for hours on post-processing, so maybe we'll do one at some point where I just make a whole track out of whatever you give me. I've made a bass track that's 4 minutes out of a kick. No, not a kick. I recorded like me hitting a table, made the sub, made the kick, made all the synths, made like a retro Rhodes sounding thing, all of it out of that. Just with post-processing, and it's a really good exercise to try and do something like that because it shows you a lot. F9 has a ton of really cool all Ableton stock stuff that's just like gets you quickly into some cool ideas, which I would strongly suggest checking out. So for the vocals in this track, I was lucky enough to work with this singer from Anima. Her name's Ariel. She's a badass, and because of that, I recorded these vocals at the Icon Studio in LA, using like a tube amplifier. I ran it through an Avalon preamp that has a tube in it. I did all of my compression inside of the hardware gear, and then bounced that all out. And then I ran it through, my friend had an Aphex exciter. I don't know if you've ever used the Waves Aphex exciter or something, but I ran it through the Aphex exciter, like the analog one, as well, to get some like high-end sheen. And so while you can see I still did some stuff, a lot of the original timbre is fucking gorgeous on its own, because of that hardware gear and a really nice microphone. And this is just sort of word to the wise, like, there are, in almost every city, someone rents nice high-end gear. It could cost you anywhere from $20 to $100 for a day. If you do your planning in advance, you can get all your recording done in a day and have a sound that like you'll never be able to get to with software. So if you know you're going to be working with someone that's really good and it's worth it, definitely just rent something super nice for the day. Rent a good preamp, rent a good mic. It makes a world of difference. So for this section here, which I think is probably the most pretty vocal section, I recorded doubles of Ariel singing the airborne hook and just put them left and right. I had to do a little bit of massaging here with like warping it slightly so that they'd line up similarly. And this took hours. It's still not even perfect, but I took a utility and only extracted the right stereo on this one. This one, I was mostly in stereo, but I extracted the left just for one part because the left was better than the stereo, and then I had to re-stereoize it. In general, like, these are things that are super nitpicky, but they're really important to figuring, like, some stereo images are very well balanced if you just put one on the right and one on the left. Some needs to be 30% on the right. One needs to be wide. You got to try out like every permutation you can think of to fit the balance, because each vocal take has different volumes, and if you just compress them to be the same, you're going to start to mess with some of the emotion of the take. When people naturally compress their voice when they sing, and you make artificial emotion with too much compression in a sound. So anything you can do to balance sort of the delivery before compression, and then use compression more as a glue on the whole group at the end with like a glue compressor, for instance, or a multiband just to pull out a couple of those frequencies that get gnarly when they're layered together. That should be the primary use for compression, in my opinion, especially for sustained vocals. Like I work with like a jazz singer and I work with rappers, and for them, there's more of like a stage compression, which I can go over in a sec. But for sustained stuff, be careful with compressing things too much. So at a group level, what am I doing? So I have a lead vocal here. And like all that really high sheeny stuff was from a hardware Aphex exciter doing it. So it's sort of hard for me to show you that. But if you want to see what the plugin looks like, hardware unit is purple also. It's very pretty. This bad boy here. Oh, this was not the same one. Is this the right one? Well, this isn't what mine looks like. I don't think this is Waves. Is it Waves? It looks like Waves. Well, there's a purple one, and that's the one I used. I can't keep up with these skeuomorphic designs. That's also a fun word if you want to sound smart. Skeuomorphic is used to describe when a plugin looks like its hardware equivalent. It doesn't actually have to be just a plugin, but it's when the software version of the thing looks like the real thing. which I think is such a dumb system. I love that Steve Duda did not do that with Serum, so it doesn't look like Diva, which is such a diva. It's kind of ironic that it's called Diva. So as a group, I grouped these vocals together, and for color, it seems, I used the Jack Joseph Puig vocals from Waves. I didn't do a lot with it. Most of the things are pulled down. Interestingly, I put it on a male setting. I did not use a preset. I think I just clicked these through randomly and messed, or not randomly, but I dialed each one individually from scratch. I'll like do an A/B. So actually that gives a lot of the high-end sheen. The magic knob, I'm pretty sure, is the one you want for that. Luckily there's almost no S's in the vocals, so I didn't have to do too much de-essing stuff. Let's go through the verse.
Hold your thoughts together, covers all you love. Beneath you keep your rhymes and reasons spreading like a drug. Can it hold your thoughts together?
Oh, that's really cool. I forgot I did this. So I took a harmony of the vocal and did two versions of it. One format shifted down by like 5 steps or something. That typically is about how much you need to do to really get it to like low guy from like normal girl. And then I put them in a chain where like, how can I show this quickly? So maybe I can do it with the original vocal. Let's see. So I throw an auto pan on, group it, throw a format shifter. I'll just use Little Altar Boy. I don't think I used Little Altar Boy for this because I wasn't using it regularly then. But so this is like, you know, guy.
Yeah,
it's about 5. Pull this bad boy up. Pull the phase to like 180. Boom. Duplicate that chain. Turn off the format on the other. Hold on, I'm gonna map the rates to a macro so I can dial it in. Oh, sorry. One last step. See how it says normal? You hit invert. So one of these two is doing the same thing, but just opposite.
Your thoughts together covers all you love. Beneath you keep your rhymes and reasons spreading like a drug.
This introduces a very peculiar stereo sound, just because the only difference in stereo is actually just the format. I think I did this on a harmony track though. It wasn't actually on the lead track. But, I mean, it sounds pretty similar to this, so I don't think...
Can it hold your thoughts together, covers all you love. Beneath you keep your rhymes and reasons.
So that's a fun way to sort of get something to be stereo, which is nice for harmonies in general, is you want to put them out to the side so you can leave room for the mono version on the vocals. Alrighty, hopping back in. Cool. Alrighty. We don't have very much time. We have 5 minutes. So again, please ask questions if you want them to be answered. Otherwise, you will have to do lessons with me to get those answers. One cool thing I did that I really liked in this track, it kind of started the whole song. You hear it in the intro. I have this djembe reverb. So Altiverb has a convolution of a djembe. And I blasted the drums through that. And at one point, they aren't even playing... Is it here? Yeah, wait, where is it? Yeah, right here. Where is it coming? So I can't even see where it's coming from. I think it's this one. So this one, there's no volume going, right? At all. Is this actually it? Sorry, now I'm like tripping out. So the original sound is this. But I got rid of all of the volume, only sent it into the djembe. So it's literally like if I were to just have been playing playing this inside of a tiny djembe, like to scale, you know, not a giant djembe, but just like a little baby one. And there are multiple moments in the song, like lots of these sounds are being slammed through the djembe. Like this guy here, if I just solo the djembe. This is doing a lot for the timbre of the song. And it's not like a normal reverb, right? Because of the body of the convolution, it doesn't really give it very good space. But what I did find is it makes things feel very tiny, which I liked that feel because there's sort of this ominousness, and it pairs nicely with this feeling of delicate tininess. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's sort of my thought process. Can I show you the chords I did? Oh yeah, so the main hit and drum in this song is literally just like the bum is just a lounge lizard on like C sharp. Lounge Lizard is an awesome plugin. It's done by the guys that made Corpus and Tension. They're like a physical modeling company known by Applied Acoustic Sciences, I think. AAS. But it just is a great, like instead of using like the stock keyboard, it's a great thing to throw in if you want to just be like cool. Just like instant dust, right? It's just, so I was just feeling, no, that's the wrong one. Wait, was it? Yeah. So it's funny is there's an 808 and then literally the mid bass of the song is a fucking Rhodes. It just sounded really good, so I took it, but it's not something I would normally do. It just happened because I was jamming on it and I was like, this sounds really good low. But I would definitely check out that company. They have a ton of plugins that are all really good. They're all emulations of different types of instruments like synths, and they have cool perk design stuff. I'm a huge fan of physical modeling. It's a dark hole that I suggest you get into at some point when you have a full day to do it. But it's a good final frontier for sound design. So we're hitting 8:30. Any other plugins you'd recommend for vocals than Little Altar Boy and those Waves ones? Neutron is really good. For if you just want to like balance things out or get like a quick color effect. If I throw Neutron 2 onto, say, the full group, you can go to these presets, and there's these like production elements presets, for instance, or sound effects presets. And they all sort of have a different, if you read the names, it'll make sense, but they have some that sort of make things feel like, is it like 50s TV soundtrack? Those are all really good. Vocal synth is really awesome. I've just started using it more so lately, but I can already see that it has access to some of the most powerful color type things you can do and creative effects. It's got a vocoder in here, some like bit crush, redux. There's really nice like amp cabinets, sort of distortion, chorus delay, ring modulation that matches to the key. It's got auto tune. This thing's sort of meant to do everything I would do in other plugins, but just in vocal synth. But I don't really have time to go into that. The perk. Can you show how you made that perk that sounds like it's tuned? Resonated pitching down. I think these are mostly bounced loops, the drums. So I don't really have them. I think for this song, a lot of them, I just like pulled in loops and started messing with them. I do a lot of like resampling of loops and, you know, grain glitches and stuff like that. So these aren't really, this isn't the best track to show drum stuff on. They're all kind of loopy stuff. Again, this was 2.5 years ago when I was not as good at drum programming, so. The main snare. It's got a neutron transient shaper. I love this for snares. I use this primarily just to pull down the sustain on the top end. This multi-band transient design we're talking about. So at about 3,000 hertz and above, I pull the sustain down a little bit. It's going to make the top end tighter. It's great for gluing sounds together if you want to glue a transient with another transient. Passive EQ is Massive Passive's ugly little brother that has less CPU and is not quite as dank, but I can use it a lot more without destroying my computer. Did some reverb throw stuff. Looks like there's a little reverb that's like 315 milliseconds. I can barely hear it. I think I just used that for like a small amount of stereo width. The size is really low also, so it'll have like full frequency spectrum sound. Yeah, we're already going over time. That's pretty much my lead. Sorry, 220. Maybe this. It's actually so out of key on its own. That's kind of hilarious. But I don't know. I bounced this out and I don't really have time to pull it up. But looks like there's some gate stuff, something complicated going on. It's not clear. Well, I guess y'all have to meet with me separately because we are at 8:35. I really appreciate y'all hanging out for this.